Okay guys, in this video, we're moving on to the second part of the ADAS model. What we're going to do is to combine the ISLM and the ADAS to see the overall dynamics of the ADAS model. So a simple rule of thumb is that the ADAS equilibrium is going to follow the ISLM equilibrium. So just let me graphically show you what I mean. So if an equilibrium in the ISLM model is going to create an equilibrium output of Y0, what happens is that the equilibrium output in the ADAS model is also going to be Y0. So that is what I mean by the ADAS equilibrium is going to follow the ISLM equilibrium. So when we draw our AD curve and our AS curve, what happens is that the equilibrium is going to be over here, okay, at point A, where the output is Y0 and the price level is P0. So just let me zoom in so that you can see this better. So if the initial equilibrium is that simple, are the dynamics that simple? Well, let's take a look at an expansionary fiscal policy where government spending increases and the IS curve is going to shift to the right. As such, so we have a new IS curve of IS1 G1 T0. So after the crowding out effect, we are at point B in the ISLM equilibrium, and the output should be Y1. So by right, the AD curve is supposed to shift to the right as well, giving me a new equilibrium at point B. So you see, the ADS equilibrium is still following the ISLM equilibrium. But here's the thing, the price level has just increased, which means that the real money supply is going to fall, leading the LM curve to shift up. So there are going to be some implications in this. The LM curve is going to shift up to reflect the new price level, which gives us an equilibrium in the ISLM model of point C. And now the output level falls to Y2. So does it mean that the AD curve is going to shift to the left again? So we have a new AD curve of AD2, which is still the same level of government spending. But wait, the price level is now going to fall again from P1 to P2. So this means that the real money supply is going to increase, right? So the LM curve is going to shift down. Shifting down the LM curve is going to cause your output to increase, and your AD curve is going to shift to the right again, and then your price level is going to increase again, which is going to change the real money supply again, and then you need to change the LM curve again, and then you need to change the AD curve again, which then changes the output level again, and you're confused. But there's no need to worry because Quickienomics believes in making things simple for you to understand. So when we look at the dynamics of the ADAS model, there are certain pointers that you should take note of. Firstly, you should know that your LM curve is really annoying. And it's really annoying because you have got the price level that's affecting the LM curve. And when the price level keeps changing, your LM curve keeps changing. So you have to really be careful of the LM curve. Now, the second thing you're going to take note of is you should establish your ISLM equilibrium before establishing the ADAS equilibrium in the short run. The reason behind this is to avoid the really annoying LM curve. So with these 2 points in mind, here are 5 simple steps when you're talking about the dynamics of the ISLM model and the ADAS model. So I'm going to break it down into the short run and the long run. So let's look at the short run. The first step will be to, of course, apply whatever economic disturbance that you experience. The second step will be to shift the LM curve to cater for the change in price. Okay, so these 2 things are going to be happening simultaneously. I'll show you what that means later. Now the third step, which is the last step of the short run, is of course to shift your AD curve according to your ISLM equilibrium. Now for the long run, the fourth step will be to shift your SAS curve, and this is going to result in a change in price, right? And that brings me to the last step, which is to shift the LM curve so that you cater for this change in price, which changes the real money supply in the economy. So these are the 5 simple steps that you have to use when you talk about the dynamics of the ISLM ADAS model. I would suggest that you pause the video right now and copy down these 5 steps on a piece of paper before we move on to the graphical explanations. Okay, so very quickly, let us establish our initial equilibrium and look at what happens when we have a case of an expansionary fiscal policy. Let's make a very simple assumption that the government is going to increase its spending. So this is going to cause the IS curve to shift right. Knowing this, the AD curve is also going to shift right because of an increase in output, causing the price level to increase, the real money supply to fall. Therefore, concurrently, your LM curve is going to shift up as well to reflect the new price level of P1. So here's your new IS curve with the new government spending, and here is your new LM curve for the new price level. As you can see, the price level here reflected should be P1. So point B should be the short-run equilibrium in the ISLM model, giving you an output of Y1, and an increase in demand will shift the aggregate demand curve to the right to AD1, reflecting the new government spending of G1. So the new equilibrium in the ADAS model is going to give you a new equilibrium price of P1, which is also reflected in that LM curve. So as you can see, by shifting the LM curve before shifting the AD curve will make things much simpler for you as compared to the previous situation. So to conclude for the short run, the output level is increased to Y1. Okay, and since the output is higher than the natural rate, your unemployment is going to fall, causing the labor union's bargaining power over the nominal wages to increase. This is what we have seen in the previous video. And also, the price level is increased to P1. However, nominal wages are the same, therefore, the real wages of the labor would fall. So that brings us to the end of the short run analysis. Now, moving on to the long run, since the labor's bargaining power has increased, the nominal wages are going to increase so that the real wages will go back to its original level. And this will cause the short run aggregate supply curve to shift up because there is an increase in the cost of production. Now, I will be talking more about this shifting of the SAS curve more in the next video where we talk about inflation and unemployment. So what's going to happen here is that the SAS is going to shift up until the output level goes back to its natural rate, which would be something like this. So SAS1 gives me a new equilibrium in the ADS model of point C, and the price level has now increased to P2, which means that the real money supply is going to fall, and the LM curve is now going to shift up until the ISLM model reaches the natural rate of output. Okay, so LM curve shifts up, I will go to point C, and there you have it. This is my new equilibrium in the ISLM model, and this is going to be my final equilibrium in both the ISLM and the ADS model. So what you will notice is that the output level has gone back to its original point, so it has not changed in the long run. Output is a real variable. Okay, real wages also have not changed in the long run because it fell in the short run and then it went back to its original point after the bargaining round to increase the nominal wages. What has changed is the real money supply. You will notice that the real money supply has actually fallen because the nominal money is M0, but the price level is now P2, which is much higher. So the real money supply has fallen. Okay, so those were the 5 steps in analyzing the dynamics of the ISLM ADAS models. Now let's take a look at another example for practice. Let's talk about a contractionary fiscal policy this time. So let's assume that the government raised the tax level and the IS curve is going to be shifting left. You know at the same time that the AD curve is going to shift left as well because of a small output. So the price level is going to fall, causing the real money supply to increase. The LM curve is going to shift up to reflect the new price level of P1. So here's my new IS curve, and LM curve is going to shift down to reflect the new price level of P1. And point B is my short run equilibrium in the ISLM curves, and Y1 is a new output. So the ADAS model is going to follow the output of Y1. So therefore, point B over here, which is due to my new AD curve of AD1, is going to give me a new price level of P1, which is already reflected in the LM curve number 1. So overall in the short run, my output level is going to fall below the natural rate, okay, and it's going to be at Y1. So unemployment is going to increase, the labor union's bargaining power is going to fall, the price level has also fallen, but the nominal wages are the same. So real wages will now increase, and that is the end of the short run analysis. So moving on to the long run, the labor union will not be able to maintain those real wages. Therefore, the nominal wage is going to fall until we go back to the original level of real wage. So this will cause the SAS curve to shift down because the cost of production has decreased. And the SAS is going to shift down until we reach the natural rate of output in the ADS model, okay, which is over here at point C. Your price level is going to fall again to P2. Okay, and what that means is that the real money supply is now going to increase due to a smaller denominator. So the LM curve will now shift down again until the ISLM model reaches the natural rate of output. And here we have it at point C, a lower level of interest rates, and we have reached the final equilibrium for both the ISLM and the ADS model. So you see, it's actually quite simple. Now, a few things that you should take note of. What are the important variables that have changed or not changed in the long run? So the first important variable, you know that the real output has not changed. We have gone back to the natural rate of output. Okay. Secondly, has the real wage changed? Well, the answer is no. The nominal wage has increased, the price level is increased, but at the end of the day, at the end of the long run, your real wage is still the same. But look at your real money supply. What has happened to the real money supply? Well, the real money supply has increased. And this is because with the same nominal money supply, you have a lower price level, causing the real money supply to increase. Okay, now let's look at another example. Instead of a fiscal policy, let's talk about an expansionary monetary policy this time. Now, you're still going to be using the same 5 simple steps. So the first thing will be to increase the money supply, and the LM curve is going to shift down. So this is the economic disturbance, right? At the same time, you know that the AD curve is also going to shift to the right because there's going to be an increase in output from the ISLM model. So the price level is going to increase, causing the real money supply to fall. So knowing this, your LM curve is again going to shift up to reflect a new price level of P1. So what you should see is first the LM curve is going to shift down, and LM1 is going to reflect the new nominal money supply. So the increase in price level to P1 is going to cause the real money supply to fall. Therefore, you have LM2 reflecting M1 and P1. So the final equilibrium in the ISLM model for the short run is going to be at point B, giving us a short run output of Y1. So as you can see, the LM curve shifted down first and then up slightly. So your AD curve is also going to shift to the right so that it follows the short run equilibrium in the ISLM model, and you now have a new output level of Y1 and a new price level of P1, which is already reflected in LM2. So to conclude the short run, you know that output level has increased beyond the natural rate to Y1, causing the unemployment level to fall. So the labor union's bargaining power on the nominal wages is going to increase. So the price level has also increased from P0 to P1, but the nominal wages are still the same. Therefore, the labor's real wage would have fallen. So that is the end of the short run analysis. Now, moving on to the long run, your nominal wages are going to increase until the real wages go back to its original level. So the SES curve is now going to shift up because of an increase in the cost of production. And the SEF is going to shift up until you achieve the natural rate of output in the ADS model. So that's given in point C, and you have a higher price level of P2. So the real money supply is now going to fall, causing the LM curve to shift up in the ISLM model, and we're going to shift up all the way until we get the natural rate of output. So LM3 is actually LM0, and point A is actually point C. So we've gone back to the original point in the ISLM model, and in the ADS model, we now have a higher price level. So let's take a look at some of the important variables that has changed or has not changed in the long run. So obviously your GDP or your output has not changed because we are now back to the natural rate. The real wage also has not changed. And let's look at the real money supply. Well, you notice that the real money supply has not changed, right? And to easily see this, your LM curve is back at its original position. So when the LM curve does not shift around in the long run, it means that your real money supply is still the same. So what we say here is that since this expansionary monetary policy has not caused any change in any real variables, we say that money is neutral. Okay, so we're going to talk more about this later when we discuss the classical dichotomy. Okay, for now, what I would like to try is to do a contractionary monetary policy by yourself and use those 5 simple steps that we've discussed to analyze the ISLM ADES dynamics. Okay, I'm just going to go through one last example, and this would be quite a cool example. This time, we'll be talking about a policy mix that is expansionary. Okay, so we're going to have 2 things that's going to happen. First thing is there's going to be an increase in government spending, and there's also going to be an increase in the money supply. So IS curve is going to shift right, your island curve is going to shift down. So these 2 things are your economic disturbances that happen simultaneously. You know that the AD curve is going to shift right due to an increase in output level. So this is going to cause the price level to increase and the real money supply to fall. So Simultaneously, the LM curve is going to shift up to reflect the new price level of P1. Okay, so my IS curve is going to shift right over here, and we're going to call this IS1, reflecting the new level of government spending. And now you're going to shift the LM curve down, pretty far down, and this is going to be LM1 to reflect the new money supply. And you're going to shift the LM curve up a little bit to reflect the new nominal money supply and the new price level. So we have point B as the short run equilibrium in the ISLM model, which gives us a higher level of output at Y1. So what's going to happen now is that my AD curve is going to have to shift right so that my ADEs model follows the equilibrium in the ISLM model. So I've got AD1 reflecting a new government spending level and a new nominal money supply level. So point B also gives me a higher price level of P1, which is already reflected in LM2. Okay, let's quickly conclude the short run. So the output level has increased beyond the natural rate to Y1, unemployment has fallen, so the labor union's bargaining power on the wages have increased. The price level has increased to P1, but nominal wages are the same. Therefore, the labor's real wage would have fallen, and that is the end of the short-run analysis. Moving to the long run, nominal wages will increase until we reach the original level of real wages. Therefore, your SCS curve is going to shift up because the cost of production to the firms is now higher, and the SCS is going to shift up until we reach the natural rate of output. So as you can see, we have drawn the SCS curve really higher so that we can go back to the natural rate, and we've even drawn out the graph. So P2 is the new price level in this economy. So now that the price level has increased from P1 to P2, the real money supply is going to fall. So the LM curve is now going to shift up until the ISLM reaches the equilibrium, whereby the output is back at its natural rate. So here's my LM curve. This is LM3 reflecting the money supply of M1 and the price level of P2. So we're at point C, which is the final equilibrium, and we have a higher level of interest rates. Okay, let's look at the important variables. So in the long run, the output level has remained the same. So the real GDP is the same. It has not changed. The real wages also has not changed. But now let's take a look at the real money supply. So the real money supply would have fallen because the final LM curve is LM3, which is a higher LM curve than LM0. So what this means is that the real money supply has eventually decreased. So since there has been one real variable that has changed, what you can say here is that in a policy mix, money is not neutral, okay? Because money is neutral when no real variables have changed in the long run. And that brings me to the last topic in this video. Let's talk about the classical dichotomy. So what exactly is the classical dichotomy? Before we go there, let's ask ourselves, what is a dichotomy? Well, a dichotomy is simply a division or a contrast between two things, okay? So you're simply separating two things. So applying this to the classical dichotomy, what we're trying to dichotomize here is actually the real variables and the nominal variables. So what the classical dichotomy is saying is that you can actually analyze the real variables and the nominal variables separately. Okay, so that's what it's trying to say. So a common question that you might be asked is there a classical dichotomy when prices and wages are flexible? So what you can do is to list down all the real variables and list down all the nominal variables to see whether any of them has changed. Okay, so real variables would be income, your real wages. Your nominal variables would be, the price level, nominal wages, nominal interest rates, and the nominal money supply. And talking about that, the real money supply is a real variable as well. So this is what a classical dichotomy would look like. Okay, so your real GDP will have no change, real wage will have no change, real money supply will have no change. And you have no change in the real money supply when your LM curve is the same LM curve as in the initial equilibrium. So an instance where the real money supply has changed is like in this example over here. A case whereby the real money supply has not changed is like when we were talking about the expansionary monetary policy. So while there are no changes in any real variables, but your nominal variables like your price, wage, interest rates, and your nominal money supply has changed, and of course your nominal money supply will change when you have a monetary policy, a scenario like that clearly shows that there is a classical dichotomy because look, all the real variables have not changed. You don't have to care about them. You just need to look at the nominal variables and you see that, one or two things have changed, right? So in conclusion, you have a classical dichotomy when your real variables all do not change. Okay, so that is a simple explanation to the classical dichotomy. Of course, there's going to be more advanced stuff when you go on to the further unit of macroeconomics, but we'll leave that till then. For now, I want to thank you for studying with Quickienomics. Take care, and I'll see you in the next video.